Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most shocking and fast unfolding crises in Eastern Europe. Belarus is burning, Russia is interfering, and Ukraine sees an opportunity. This isn't just another regional conflict. This is the tremor before something much bigger, a chain reaction that could shake the very balance of power across the continent. It all started with small fires, protests, sabotage, whispers of rebellion, but in Belarus, those sparks have now turned into an inferno. The streets of Minsk and other major cities are no longer calm. What began as scattered anti-government unrest has now turned into chaos fueled by anger, desperation, and a growing belief that the Lukashenko regime's time might finally be up. But what's most alarming is that this isn't happening in isolation. Russia has stepped in, not quietly, not cautiously, but with a heavy hand. Troops, intelligence operatives, and covert influence networks are all at play. Moscow claims it's there to stabilize its ally, but anyone watching closely can see the deeper game. This is about control. Control over Belarus, control over the borders of NATO, control over Ukraine's western flank. Belarus, for decades, has been the loyal satellite of the Kremlin, a buffer zone, a political puppet state that allowed Moscow to project power without consequence. But the relationship between Lukashenko and Putin has been crumbling for years. Ever since the war in Ukraine began, Lukashenko has walked a tightrope, pretending to back Russia, but quietly resisting total submission. That balance has now snapped. As fires burn in Minsk, Putin has made his move. Russian peacekeeping units are reportedly entering Belarusian territory under the pretext of restoring order. But these aren't peacekeepers. These are enforcers, the same kind of operatives we've seen in Crimea, Donbas, and Georgia before. Wherever they go, sovereignty disappears. Inside Belarus, opposition groups are claiming responsibility for targeting military supply lines, power stations, and rail networks used to transport Russian equipment. Videos are circulating online showing trains ablaze, military convoys ambushed, and local police overwhelmed. The government's grip on power is slipping, and as it weakens, chaos is spreading. For Putin, this is both a problem and an opportunity. A problem because instability on his western border could threaten his strategic depth, but an opportunity because it gives him an excuse to tighten his hold on Belarus completely. It's the playbook we've seen before: create disorder, then rescue your ally by taking over their sovereignty. But this time, there's a twist. Ukraine is watching, and for Kyiv, the turmoil in Belarus is a once-in-a-generation chance. A chance to push back, to strike where Russia least expects, and to reshape the map of Eastern Europe in its favor. Ukraine's intelligence services have been preparing for this kind of moment since the full-scale invasion began. They've studied Russia's weaknesses, its overextended logistics, and the strain of fighting on multiple fronts. Now, as Russia diverts attention and resources toward Belarus, cracks are appearing in its defenses elsewhere, especially along the occupied territories of Ukraine. Zelensky and his advisors know this is their window. A distracted Russia is a vulnerable Russia. Every troop sent north to Belarus is one less guarding the front lines in Donetsk, Luhansk, or Crimea. Kyiv has already begun capitalizing. Reports suggest that Ukrainian forces are ramping up operations along key front lines, testing Russian defenses, and reclaiming small but strategic areas that have been under occupation for months. At the same time, Belarusian volunteers, once exiled, now armed, are fighting alongside Ukrainian forces. These fighters see this as a chance to free their homeland from Moscow's shadow. They've long trained on Ukrainian soil, waiting for the day they could return to Belarus and ignite the flames of resistance. That day has come, and make no mistake, this isn't just about Belarus or Ukraine. This is about the entire balance of power in Europe. Poland, Lithuania, and other NATO members are on high alert. Troop movements near their borders are being monitored minute by minute. NATO commanders are scrambling to predict Putin's next step. Will he double down or pull back before the situation spirals out of control? Inside Russia, the mood is tense. The propaganda machine is working overtime, framing the events in Belarus as a Western-backed coup. State TV is warning citizens that NATO is plotting to encircle Russia. But beneath the surface, ordinary Russians are growing restless. The economy is strained, sanctions are biting harder than ever, and the war fatigue is undeniable. Now, with Belarus burning, the illusion of control is fading. There are also reports of internal conflict among Russian elites. Some see the intervention in Belarus as reckless, a distraction from the already failing campaign in Ukraine. Others view it as essential, a necessary step to prevent another pro-Western uprising on Russia's doorstep. But for Putin, it's personal. Losing Belarus would be a humiliation too great to bear. It would mean the collapse of what little remains of his Union state. Vision and signal to the world that Russia's sphere of influence is disintegrating. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, morale is rising. The symbolism of Belarusian resistance has electrified the population. It's not just about reclaiming lost land anymore. It's about freedom, unity, and revenge. Kyiv's media outlets are calling this the turning point, the moment when the tide of history begins to shift. Military analysts believe Ukraine is poised to exploit this chaos through hybrid tactics, not just conventional warfare, but sabotage, psychological operations, and cyber offensives. The idea is simple: stretch Russia thin, bleed it from all sides, and make it impossible for the Kremlin to control the narrative or the battlefield. And it's working. Russian forces are reportedly facing simultaneous crises, supply chain breakdowns, morale collapse, and now unrest spreading from Belarus into Western Russia itself. Railway lines inside Russia have been sabotaged, oil depots set ablaze, and disinformation campaigns are running wild. The war that Putin tried to control has turned into a wildfire that refuses to burn out. In Belarus, Lukashenko is reportedly losing control of his own security forces. Some officers are refusing orders. Others are quietly defecting or fleeing the country. The propaganda that once painted him as the strongman of Minsk now looks hollow. His speeches, filled with panic and blame, reveal a man watching his empire slip away. The people of Belarus, long silenced, are no longer afraid. They've seen the cost of submission. They've watched Ukraine fight for its survival. And now they are beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, their freedom is worth the risk. At the same time, the West is walking a fine line. Supporting Ukraine is one thing, but supporting rebellion inside Belarus carries far greater risk. Any direct Western involvement could trigger the very escalation NATO wants to avoid. That's why most aid and coordination are happening quietly, through covert channels, intelligence sharing, and cyber operations rather than overt military moves. Behind the scenes, Washington, London, and Brussels are holding emergency consultations. They know that if Belarus collapses completely, Russia could respond in unpredictable ways, even nuclear threats if cornered. But they also see an opportunity to weaken Putin's grip permanently. The question haunting every strategist right now is simple: how far will they go? China is watching too carefully. Beijing has always had a complicated relationship with Moscow, allies in rhetoric, but rivals in ambition. A weakened Russia could make China the uncontested power in Eurasia. Yet too much instability could disrupt trade routes and energy deals that Beijing relies on. For Xi Jinping, the Belarus crisis is both a warning and a window. Across social media, footage of Belarusian resistance is spreading like wildfire. Citizens setting up barricades, drones dropping leaflets calling for freedom, soldiers abandoning their posts. It's reminiscent of the early days of Ukraine's revolution, but with the added tension of a nuclear-armed neighbor trying to stamp it out. And in Ukraine, that energy is contagious. Soldiers on the front lines are sharing messages of solidarity with Belarusian partisans. They see in them a reflection of their own struggle, small nations standing up to a giant empire, refusing to bow. This growing spirit of defiance is something Moscow cannot suppress with tanks or missiles. It's psychological. It's generational. It's spreading faster than any army can move. And it's reshaping the mindset of an entire region that has been trapped in fear for decades. But here's the hard truth: revolutions burn bright, but they also burn fast. Belarus could easily descend into full civil war if the opposition and military split completely. If that happens, Russia might move in openly, declaring annexation or forming a puppet government under the guise of stabilization. That would set off a chain reaction unlike anything since the Cold War. Ukraine's challenge now is to act decisively, but carefully. Push too hard, and it risks provoking Russia into deeper escalation. Hold back too much, and the moment could slip away. This is a test not just of strategy, but of endurance and timing. In Moscow, Putin faces one of the greatest dilemmas of his career. His empire is bleeding on multiple fronts. His allies are crumbling. His people are restless. And the world is beginning to see that the myth of Russian invincibility might finally be breaking. Belarus burning is more than a crisis. It's a symbol of how control built on fear and lies eventually collapses, of how nations once silenced by dictators can rise again, and of how a single spark, once lit, can spread far beyond the borders of the one who tried to contain it. As the days pass, one thing becomes clear: this story isn't over. Belarus is not just fighting for its own freedom, but for the future of Eastern Europe. Ukraine is not just seizing a chance, it's rewriting the narrative of resistance. And Russia, once feared as the untouchable superpower, is now caught in the flames it helped ignite. The world is watching history unfold in real time. The decisions made in the next few weeks will define the next decade, perhaps even the century. Whether Belarus rises from the ashes as a free nation or falls deeper into Moscow's grip will depend on the courage of its people, the resolve of Ukraine, and the restraint of powers that now hover on the edge of confrontation. So as the smoke rises over Minsk and the world holds its breath, one truth echoes louder than ever: no empire lasts forever. Not when the people it oppresses finally find their voice. Thank you for watching. Stay aware, stay critical, and never stop seeking the truth. Because the story of Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia isn't just about borders or power. It's about the timeless fight between freedom and control, between hope and fear, between the future and the past.